Hello, I'm Paul Briley, and you're listening to Off the Comma. I'm a human who cares about supporting other humans. On this podcast, we explore all facets of what it means to feel stuck in life. We talk with people just like us who found themselves sitting on a comma and not knowing where to go next. We'll unpack the experience with them, where they've been stuck, what it feels like, what they experienced, and what they learned. My goal is to inspire you by seeing yourself in others. I believe that when we feel more connected and seen, magic can happen. And remember, if you find yourself sitting on a comma in your life, you can also talk to me without a microphone. To explore coaching with me and getting off the comma in your own life, check out my information and book a call with me at offthecomma.com. And I'm also doing something different. I'm curating my own sponsor community, local businesses and professionals who I handpick and who align with our vision here. Be sure to check them out, learn more about them on my website and my YouTube channel. In the meantime, let's get into this week's conversation. And we're back with another exciting episode of Off the Comma, and I'm really excited to just continue to be able to do this work, and so honored to be able to sit with all of the very different people that come onto this podcast and tell their stories. You know, even though everybody comes from different places and does different things, and we're from all different countries and different age groups and all these different things, like the thing that we all have in common is this experience of being stuck, feeling stuck, and getting unstuck, which, you know, we obviously affectionately refer to as getting off the comma or sitting on the comma. So this week is no exception. I'm very excited to have another brand new guest, and someone who I haven't met before, and I'm very much looking forward to getting to meet him through the telling of his story today. And so this week we have Xavier Meza, and he's coming to us from the United States. And I'm going to shut up now and let Xavier introduce himself, correct me of anything that I've misstated. And Xavier, welcome to Off the Comma. And we're going to get into your story in a little bit. First, let's get to know you a little bit more. And why don't you start by telling us, like, how would you like to be known? And then you can tell us, you know, whatever else you'd like us to know about you.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here. Great to be here. I'm glad to be here as well. I guess for wanting to be known, I'm a young kid, so I'm 18 years old, just graduated high school. One of my biggest goals, I think, for what I want to be known as for my life is being respected for doing something big. I just want to be, I want to be able to do something that I think people look and are like, oh yeah, Xavier Meza, he did that. And I want to have that respect. I think respect's really important to me. And to do that, the kind of qualities that I wanted to achieve and grow with in my time is just being disciplined. And a lot of people say humble, but honestly, I think in the beginning, staying humble is important because I think it's good for me to listen to people who are doing things that I want to be able to achieve. But I think at some point, you know, you have to use your voice, you have to be confident, you have to be a leader in something. So I also want to be careful with that word. But I guess humble can be at times a good word as well. But discipline too, because when you're doing things, when you want to do big things, you got to do hard work. And to do hard work, you need discipline. And I think that's a big difference between something like motivation, because motivation kind of comes and goes. But discipline is something that sticks with you. It's something that people know you for. So I think if other than respect, I also would want to be known to be someone with discipline and with character that is able to achieve hard and tough things that end up creating a lot of respect and success. So I think I guess regarding to what I want to be known for would be for something like that for sure.
I so appreciate you sharing that. And, you know, it's so cool, the things that you describe, how really versatile these traits and characteristics are, right? Because like disciplined can serve you in almost all the different ways in your life. Like it's not just one thing to aspire to, it's the thing that helps you with all the things that you aspire to, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
And I particularly, my ears perked up when you were talking about, you know, humble and leadership, and like it seemed a little bit, and correct me anytime I, you know, misstate something, but
you're good.
Like this, a lot of times we see, or I can speak to myself, right? Like how there could be a conflict between being a leader and being humble, and yet humble leadership is a thing, right? And
Mhm.
many leaders talk about how, being humble and having humility is what makes them a more effective leader, a more relatable leader. So,
For sure. I would say I think there's a lot of leaders out there. I specifically think about jobs that I've had and having managers or bosses like that, where there's some managers that don't really keep cool. Like if they hear something they're not used to, they kind of just go out all out and stuff like that. That's where I think that's the time where you need to be humble is when you're listening to other people.
mm,
I know I used to have problems with that. I used to be a really bad listener. I would always be
mm,
kind of like I would just talk about myself too much, but wouldn't really think about the other person I was listening to. So I think that's where being humble would be good. But there's also times where I mean, let's say you have an opinion on something, or maybe there's a problem you're trying to fix with a group of people, and you have a good issue or a good solution to fix that issue. That's a part where you need to say, "Hey, I have a solution. Listen to me." And I think
mm.
and I think that's where something where you try to get away from being humble and more being a leader and more towards being more confident and putting something out there. So that's why I try to be careful with that. But it's definitely a good quality to have. It's just, knowing that that's not the only thing. There's also
Yeah.
parts to come with it as well.
Well, and all these traits work, they're intertwined, right? Like none of these is a destination in and of itself. All of these things depend on each other and they all have situational, needs and requirements and so forth. So it's very robust how you've described yourself. I
Oh, for
really
sure, for
I
sure.
appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to, I was just said this on the last episode too. It's like I finally kind of had a realization of my own, as a podcast host. It's like, it kind of goes without saying that these traits all show themselves in the story that you're going to share with us because, it's who you are and your story is a representative, it's an example of ways that you are who you are. But it's always cool to see like where in the conversation be like, yeah, you told us that at the very beginning, and now
Yeah.
here we see it in real life. So
Hmm.
awesome. Well,
Yep.
let's get to your story. And in a second, we're going to jump into the 5 questions. Obviously, it's the same 5 questions that we ask every guest. And you and I haven't talked about what you're going to be sharing with us today. So I will be a fresh set of ears like everybody else as intentioned. But speaking of intention, one of the first things I ask every guest before we get started in their story is, Xavier, as you look ahead to the next 35, 40 minutes or so, and in the telling of your story today, what would be your intention for yourself today?
Honestly, it would probably be to wake myself up into something I'm not used to saying out loud. I
Mm,
think I think there might be something that if I ramble enough that I'll figure out and maybe I'll start connecting some dots and I'm like, wait, that's it. Or maybe like um maybe I'll find a solution to maybe some issue that's going on in my life or something like that. And like that's why I like I talk to myself a lot. I usually get a lot of hate for that. But
mm.
I usually like talking to myself and I'll like ramble about random stuff. And usually that's where come to find like interesting things that I could talk about with other people. So, I mean, being able to share my story like that, I think is something that's always good for me, no matter who's around me, if it's to myself, stuff like that. So,
I love that you said that, and there's a selfish reason for that, and a not so selfish reason. One is because I do that too. So yeah, I can self reference there and relate to that. But also like that is one of the benefits. It was really a side benefit of this podcast. Like when I created the podcast, it was always about showing people the importance of listening and the power of stories and so forth. And yet, I think it was always kind of there, but I never really gave it light or acknowledged the fact that in the telling of the story, so many cool things can happen for the storyteller themselves. And like what you said, I may learn something new about myself. It's happened over and over again,
no, for
or
sure.
unburdening, or, ooh, I saw something in a different light than I had before. So my intention for our episode together today, your episode, is to support you in your intention, create this container, safe space for you to tell your story, but that there will be people out there who will see a little bit of themselves in you and your story, which will make them feel a little bit more connected, a little less alone. And in the best of cases, perhaps feel inspired or even empowered to go out and do something that they've been wanting to do. So Let's do it together. How's that?
Sure, sounds great.
Awesome. Xavier, let's get into your story. The first of the questions is, Xavier, where in your life have you found yourself sitting on a comma?
Sitting on a comma. I like the way you phrase that because it's like a comma is kind of like it's like a stopping point, but there's always something after a comma. There's something between that comma and
Mm,
that period. So there's something after, but it's a good stop. And I when I thought of that first, the first thing I thought was like a realization. I feel like you're at a point where you realize something, and then that's where you stop
mm,
because that's when you're like, okay, wait, hold on, let me think, because now there's something new here. So let me think here, stop here, and then I'll keep going after figuring out how to deal with this. So I guess in my life where I kind of realized this, and I think this is probably the most important thing that's probably happened to me was my sophomore year of high school when I started going into school. So I was a COVID year for freshman year, so we weren't
mm,
in school for our first year. I had the option to, but I didn't go. But I came sophomore year, and I just remember I come into sophomore year and I haven't really had many interactions with people in a while. And what I started to realize was, I mean, I'm going this first time, and it's like, it's just, I feel a lack of notice, or just, it feels like people just like don't really like recognize you. I mean, it's also a new school, so it's, you don't really know as many people, but there's a lack of that, and it almost seemed like a lack of respect. I don't think people were like actually disrespecting me by just like not talking to me or stuff like that, but it felt like that to me. So when I saw that, I didn't know what to do. I was like, okay, well, this is a little bit different than what I've been used to the past year. So what I did, the first most important thing for me was started exercising, and that was more like lifting weights and stuff like that. It was the first thing I thought was I feel a little overweight, and I think when you have an image like that, it's kind of self-deluding. I don't think people really respect that on the outside. And some people think it's like, oh, well, you should accept, if that's what you are, that's what you are. I think it's
mm,
better to think of it as if other people, if it's something that isn't going to gain you respect, then and especially since it's not hard work to be overweight or fat or anything like that. That's not hard. That's easy. And I feel like that's
mm,
why it's more respectable if you're doing exercise and you're doing the constant work, and people notice that. I think that's more respectable, and that's something that I realized was important in my life at that time. So basically I just started exercising, and it was hard. Like the first time I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do abs, like because that was what I thought was most important at the time. I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna do
mm,
abs. So I would do like these 30-minute ab workouts in my house. They were really hard. And then I realized I was starting to hear from like other people like, oh, you can't just do abs, you gotta do everything. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah. So I'm like, well, shoot, I don't know where to start. So I like started like going on apps and stuff, and like trying to figure out how to exercise correctly. And then eventually I started to figure it out, and I realized, the first couple times I was like, wow, I really can't like bicep curl 15 pounds, 20 pounds or something like that. And that's where I really
mm.
noticed. I was like, okay, yeah, something has to change here. So that's what I started doing. And then I had like friends around me who were getting into sports and stuff like that, and they were all exercising and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, maybe this is up to me too. So that's what I started doing. And then after a while, I realized I started like changing, and my body started changing. And I felt more confident too. And I think that's the one thing that people don't realize with exercise. It's like when you feel like the look good, feel good is as real as it gets. Seriously. I
Mm,
don't think there's nothing else that has ever made me more confident than exercising and seeing myself change. So just knowing that I was putting in the hard work, and my body was producing an image that showed that hard work, um, that was something that made me feel confident because I had something to rely upon.
mhm,
So I really like that and then I started getting respect. I felt more people were either looking my way or wanted to talk to me, say something. I could feel it. And I think that's something honestly, that was really important in changing the way that I looked on things, just from all the confidence that I was gaining and being able to see like, okay, well, if I could do this, there's a lot of other things I could do too. So
Hmm.
it was definitely the
Can,
start.
can I jump in with a
Of course,
question,
yeah.
a couple of
Go ahead.
questions? And completely want to acknowledge that there's probably still more story to tell. I just wanted to drill down on some of what you shared already with us. And so, first of all, just a huge acknowledgement to you for a couple of things. Like, one, I just kind of want to call attention to the fact that it's so cool that we have so many different types of people and different types of experiences here on the podcast, right? And you shared your age as 18 years old. That means nothing, or needs to mean nothing, to anyone else other than for us to be able to respect your story and the perspective where it comes from. And what I was noticing in myself is like how cool it is that people will come on and tell their stories, and how often people will tell these stories about where they've landed in their lives, and they'll reflect back to when they were 12 years old or 18 years old or what have you, and look backwards at it and say, oh, I can see, where that moment was kind of a pivotal moment, changed my life. And now you're here sharing the experiences of what it can actually be like from someone who is at that point, right? Like you have a whole lot of life, yet ahead of you, but you're already kind of diving in and noticing how you can control the outcomes in your life. So it was just something I wanted to call
Yeah,
attention to, that it's
yeah,
like,
for
it's
sure.
kind of cool. It's like this, I don't mean disrespect by this, but it's kind of like a lot of times we hear the original story or the sequel, but like from you, we almost get to hear a little bit of the prequel, right? Like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
No,
I
that's
don't know
not,
if that
no,
flies
no,
or
that's a
not.
good way of saying it. Yeah. I think,
Cool. So thank you for that. And
of
I just
course.
wanted to like honor your sharing of your story here, um, because so many folks will benefit from it, for so many reasons, but this could be one of those reasons. Now, here's the drill down part.
Okay.
You shared with us what it was like for you in your sophomore year of school, and sort of this, I'll throw in some words, so you tell me if these words don't fit, but this discomfort, this fitting in kind of dynamic, and this element of finding yourself not feeling respect. So I have two things. I don't want to forget the second thing. So the first one, I didn't really get a sense from you. You kind of talked about it and then moved through it. What was it at that point? Because you said then you noticed you weren't feeling the respect, and then you started looking into the exercise and that sort of thing. Take us back to that moment before you started the exercise routine and regimen. Like, what was really happening for you there? How did you know you weren't feeling respect? What was that like for you?
I think I just wasn't used to, I remember getting much more attention in grade school. And then going into high school, it just seemed so much more different. I just didn't feel like in grade school, you could just like walk in a classroom with a couple of students and, you guys are always talking to each other. But high school, it wasn't like that. Everything was all
Mm-hmm.
awkward. People were different, stuff like that. People didn't want to approach each other. Still don't. But, um, and also I'm pretty sure we had like a like one of those like physical tests in like PE, and I like saw like something. I was just like, or like I couldn't do like a certain amount of push-ups or something. I was like, oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
I think something small like that I think happened, but I don't know. I just remember the experiences in grade school and high school weren't as similar as I expected them to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I think in high school it was like kind of almost like a new competition in
Mm.
like trying to um I know you mentioned fit in, and that sounds pretty bad, but honestly I don't think it's as bad as it seems. But like in a way where it's like I don't want to act like other people. Obviously I'm my own person, but when I say fitting in, it's kind of like instead of fitting in, I would say I just want to excel more of a standard than I was used to, or like than I was like
Mm-hmm.
expected. Um,
Well, and if I may too, like the whole point about this podcast is that there's no good, bad, right, or wrong. So if fit in fits, and we can take away any like good or bad
Yeah.
evaluation of it. Like that's just what it was,
Mhm.
right? That's cool, right? And if fit in isn't the right word, then by all means,
Oh yeah.
what's the right word. But yeah, don't be afraid to
No.
like this is what it was. Like
Yeah.
I can, I can do my own work on how I felt about it or whether or not I thought that was good or bad. But like, fit in or respect or whatever
Yeah.
your story is. Like it just is what it was. That's what we're here to kind of understand.
For sure. Yeah.
But what I think I'm hearing you say, and then I'm going to shut up. I haven't forgotten the second one, and it's
Okay.
important. But what I think I'm hearing you say is like you said two things. Like one, the environment changed. So like sort of like the game has changed,
Yeah.
right? Because you said high school is just very different. And then when you said, and seemed like there was this physical fitness test and something about push-ups or whatever, and I wasn't happy with that, there was also something's different in me too. Like I'm different now too.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to blame it on COVID. It's probably COVID's fault, but I don't want to blame it on COVID.
Mm,
Um, I guess it's just usually when there's a lot of people around you, there's more going on. You have more of how do I say this? You have more awareness in what's going on around you. You have more understanding. But as soon as you lose that aspect, and I don't really want to talk about COVID too much, but as soon as you lose that, especially just being locked in your house all the time,
mhm.
I guess you
But
got to,
I think
yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it is. I think it's okay to talk about COVID, and I think it's probably important because it's a big part of your story. You had a whole year that disappeared. I mean, everybody did, but we're talking about your experience, and it sounds like it separated you in a way. You lost a lot of the connection that you had previously had, and it affected you in ways that surprised you.
For sure, but in the same way, it seems like an excuse. It almost seems like I'm using
Mm,
COVID as an excuse to say, "Oh, I was in a bad place because of COVID because I was locked in my house. I could have done exercise in my house. I could have went
mm,
outside, played basketball or something. I could have done something, but I I don't want to use I don't want to use COVID as a way to say, oh, because of COVID, that's why I had to. That's because of COVID, that's where I had this realization. I don't want to use that as an excuse. I think that's just
mm,
as reflecting. I don't want to have to say it like that. That doesn't seem right to me. I just have to.
mm.
I just have to say it how it is. Because
Okay.
for sure, I had the choice to. I had the choice to exercise or talk to people or stuff like that. I guess that was the choice I made, and then that's the mistake I made. I guess that put me in that position. So
Yet I would love to acknowledge you for the fact that okay, regardless of how that unfolded for you and how you want to reflect on it because it's your experience, you did come into high school and decided you wanted something different. Through a variety
yeah,
of these circumstances, you decided, okay, now it's time. So you did, it sounds like, take charge of where you wanted to go from that point. Is that fair to say?
yeah, but I still reflect that it's just I definitely could have done it earlier, and I know coulda, woulda, shoulda, but I guess it's good that it happened at all. It's good that I did do something in the end, but I think if I'm using COVID as an excuse, it seems almost degrading to me because I want to get to a point where I don't use excuses. And while you are right, and you do have a good point, I don't want to. I think mentally for me, it's better to just say it how it is, at least in my mind, than to say it like that. So
Well, and it's your story, right? You get to decide, right? And oh gosh, I mean, you and I could have a whole conversation off the mic about how you can reframe excuse because anyway, we don't need to get into all that. I'm
yeah,
I'm not here to school you, but can I ask the second question I was going to ask earlier? Okay, and then we'll get back into
sure.
the five questions. So you have this epiphany, this moment. You decide to start taking a different course. You start focusing on your physical fitness. Each step it kind of grows for you. You move to another level. You start doing new things, and you said you start to see the results of that. You start to see your body is physically changing as a result of the exercise. You're feeling more confident, and then just before we jumped in to go down this exploration, you said, and I started noticing, I don't think this was your exact word, but I started getting more attention or people started respecting me more. And I started, noticing that my interactions were growing. Do you think that the respect that you were getting, no, let me ask it as a question. Why do you think you started getting respect? What was it that you think changed in other people or changed for you to get the attention of other people?
I mean, when you're in school, you see the same people every day. So I think if I'm seeing the same people and they're starting to notice, okay, he's changing a little bit. There's something going on with him. I think that becomes interesting to them. I
Mm,
think there's like something that like sparks with them, and they might not come up to me and ask like, "Hey, what's going on with your body? Why does it look different?" I don't think that's like physically happening, but I think mentally they're seeing something different, and they're like, "Oh, okay, well, there's something going on here," and I think that just brings up interest naturally. So, and that's in all in all, that's kind of what I wanted, you
yeah.
know.
Well, and I was curious because, sometimes people are attracted to the new you, the physical, the outward, like you just look different. It happens a lot when people lose weight. I've gone
Yeah,
through periods in my life where I've lost a lot of weight and go, oh, you look different and everything. Some people will
awesome.
notice that, and some people will notice you're different, right? They'll be like, there's something different about how you carry yourself. You're more confident, right? So that's why I was kind of curious. It's like, do you think people were drawn to the physical changes or the confidence that you were gaining as a result of them? Or is it that simple?
Honestly, I think my confidence grew a little bit later. I think
Mm,
I was more focused on the physical part, but like I still couldn't talk to a girl for my life. Um, there were kids that would talk to me or like they would say hi and like I would voice crack a little bit. Sometimes I still do, unfortunately, but um, it definitely came a little bit later because I think it was more like the way I thought about interacting with people was a way that is completely different than now, and um, I guess I didn't really know how to treat people yet. So
let me ask the second of our five questions. And then obviously you can go back and forth because, there's no one way to tell a story. But the second question is, as you look back at this comma that you were sitting on and that you've been telling us about, what did that create for you?
oof. Opportunities for sure. I think a lot of opportunities come from that.
Mm,
I think socially, there's more people you can interact with now that I've gained at least a little confidence, especially a little bit much later. Once confidence really started to settle in, that definitely created more opportunities with meeting new people. And then I started speaking out. Like I remember sophomore year, my teacher, I think I had like a chemistry class, and this isn't a good way of speaking out, but I was talking more, like so much where she made me sit like in one of the corners because I was talking too much to like people around when she was teaching.
mm.
And that's like something I would never do. Like if you ask anyone, they'd be like, no, he's too quiet. That's something like he would never do. I know it's disrespectful. No.
No, not at all.
Well, to my teacher,
It's just an
to my
observation of
teacher, it
what
was
was happening.
disrespectful. As
Oh, gotcha.
I wouldn't want to do that now. But
Well, it sounds
it's
like you
just
were kind of emboldened a little bit.
yeah. I mean, yeah, I was like, and then with physical exercise, naturally, you just feel better as a person. You just, you move around better, you think better. I think more blood flows to the brain, so
Mhm.
you make better decisions too. But I mean, with that being said, I mean, yeah, more opportunities come in, especially if I'm speaking for myself and there's something like I said, maybe someone would be interested in it and then they'll start talking to me and stuff like that. But I mean, again, I was in high school, so I was kind of limited in stuff I was doing. I mean, I wouldn't say there was really any more opportunities regarding like schoolwork. So
But it sounds like the opportunities that were important for you at the time and
yeah,
are foundationally important to all of us as we move on in the world, right? Is interactions. You keep talking about interactions with people, meeting new people, level of confidence. So it sounds like that's important to you, is like how I don't know, you tell me, but like something around like wanting to be able to build a more confident version of you that could move out into the world a little bit more boldly, since I use that word. Is that fair to say?
yeah, I think there's definitely. I always used to think like, and I always used to be surrounded by people that were always like, oh, I hate talking to people, I hate dealing with people and stuff like that. But like when I really started talking to people genuinely and started listening and stuff, I actually I liked it. I like talking to people. definitely for work, I'd have to be social. Like there'd have to be new people coming in every day. I just want to see new stuff and stuff like that. But I think what I started realizing after talking to these people is just like, I actually like doing this. This is fun. This is meeting new people and then like making people laugh and stuff like that. So it's something fun for me. I guess that's why it became so important to me,
Mhm.
because it was something I like to do. Um,
What is it,
so
since this is showing up as a theme, and then we'll go on to question 3, but what is it that you enjoy, or what is it you get the most out of the talking to people? You said, I actually like talking to people and it's fun. What do you enjoy most about it?
honestly, there's so much that you can get from there's experiences you can get when they're hanging out with someone or something like that. Opportunities, somebody can invite you to a club or something. I mean, even this isn't a real quote, but I've heard like friends are more important than money because friends can get you more.
Mm.
I think that like having a relationship with people like that, especially if in like the business sense, is definitely a great thing to have. But it's just I like the reaction of people when talking to them and like just seeing different things, stuff like that. Happy, sad, mad, all these emotions and stuff like that. Which is something I never thought like I would ever enjoy, honestly, because I was more of a quiet kid. And I guess it's just something I didn't know until I really started talking to people. I was like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad.
Mm.
This isn't something. And it's like, sometimes it's a little scary when you're trying to become more confident, you're trying to talk to more people. So I guess it's just carrying yourself too. But
I really appreciate that you just said that, because this is a theme that shows up all the time. People look to confidence as some aspirational, fearless, you've arrived place. And like you're really just kind of again showing us that like confidence and fear often are in the same fist, right? Like they come together as a
yeah,
couple. It doesn't mean you don't do it, right?
yeah, for sure. I definitely try to reduce that fear as much as possible.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like I mean, like, there's even small things I've done. Like even now, like sometimes I'll say good morning to people. Like when I'm walking by, I'll like wave or something like that. I'm trying to get to the point where like, I could do compliments and stuff like that. I want like I genuinely want to be that kind of person. Just walk around like everybody's like, oh yeah, yeah, he said hi to me that one time. He's a cool guy or something like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, well, and now I'm curious, and maybe you've already told us, and I'm just trying to dig too deep. But like you said, I genuinely want to be that guy that speaks to people and talks to people, and like, why? What is it about that guy that you want?
it's respect. It's just
Okay.
respect. That's. I think I honestly I a lot of people like to say, and I know I'm comparing myself to a lot of people by saying this, but a lot of people like to say like, oh, I don't really care what other people think. I'm going to go do what I need to do, stuff like that, which is in a lot of cases can be, something that's important for people to realize. But I think having people say or having respect from people, I actually think it's a good thing. I actually think if people say good things about you, in most cases, that probably makes you a good person. And I want to be able to have those kind of experiences where I can have people saying like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy" and stuff like that. Like he's done so much, he's successful or something like that. Eventually, when I reach to that point, but it's definitely something that's important.
Well, and it also seems like there's a level of like validation in there too. It's not necessarily, or in addition to what you've described as like I get things out of this, but there's also like this level of being seen, and being seen as the type of person that you want to be seen as.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Cool. The third question, Xavier, is when you look back at sitting on this comma, what have you learned about yourself?
I don't want to be cliche and say that I think I can do anything, but I definitely can say that there's a lot of people that haven't been able to get out of that like in confidence shell or that unconfident shell. And being able to do that makes me feel like, okay, well, if this is something I could do, what else can I do? Or like, what other things can I do? Because before I wasn't as big of a dreamer like this now that I am. I wasn't reaching for the stars or anything like that now,
Mm.
now that I feel like, but now it's like it almost seems reachable. It almost seems like you could like grab it out from the clouds or something in some kind of way. But I think that's definitely something that is good to gain from talking with people and getting that
Hmm.
kind of confidence. So that's awesome.
I'm he- I'm hearing like an increased sense of self-belief, like possibility mindset, like you said, like if I can do this, then what else can I do? That
Yeah,
sounds pretty empowering.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, empowering. I try not to say anything like that's gonna I wouldn't say what's the word? Like an example, like I try not to complain as
Hmm.
much or like I said earlier, like make excuses. I try not to do stuff like that because I think that's like I don't know a good word for it, but it was like lowering my sense of belief.
Hmm.
I think it's definitely important to e- even like with myself, like just use good language to keep myself up there and keep myself going. You know, staying consistent, whether it's exercising or talking to people, being confident, stuff like that.
Hmm.
Being consistent with that and just knowing that, like, yeah, like you said, hey, if you can do this, what else can you do?
Well, and I hear in the way you talk about things, and particularly how you refer to, no excuses and not complaining. Like I hear a high degree of like personal accountability, personal responsibility in there too, which obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, which seems like it's a big part of this respect package that you want to build in your life.
Yeah, for sure. At least from everyone I've heard, all the men I've gotten advice from, being accountable is like really important.
Mm.
And not many people can do it really, which was a little bit surprising to me as the first time, but it's pretty hard to actually be accountable, but like really be accountable for everything you do. I mean, I've had a guy before tell me like you have to like even if something happens and it's not directly your fault, somehow you should still figure out, hey, you could have done this better, this better, this better. Is either way, it's gonna help you improve.
Mm.
And
Mm.
no matter what it was, either way, it's gonna help you improve. So I think that's definitely important as well.
Yeah. Well, it calls attention to like there's opportunity in everything, right? Like even if it didn't center around you, was there an opportunity to learn? Is there an opportunity to do something different? Is there an
Hmm.
opportunity to, try something new and so forth? So
Yeah, 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 for
cool.
sure.
Let's roll into the fourth question because I think this is a good place to build on it because you've just shared with us all that you've learned from this comma that you were sitting on. The fourth question is, what's changed for you as a result of sitting on this comma?
What's changed? I think just it's basic, but just everything that I've ever known about life before. Well, this isn't really basic. This is kind of complex now that I think about it, but everything that I used to know is just like completely changed. I mean, that could be just maturity. I mean, that could just be growing up, but like just genuinely, the outlook that I've had on life before is completely changed now. And
Hmm.
everything that I used to think is now like usually different, you know. Um, there's usually a lot of people that I used to align to now I don't really align with as much anymore. Um, there's also a lot more things that I notice in people now, especially with
Hmm.
like regarding like when I said earlier that it was hard for me to like listen to people. I would usually talk about myself most of the time. I'm listening to people. I realize like more things, um, more perspectives that I wasn't normally used to seeing, like culturally or things that people were interested in. I'm like, okay. And then you start learning about these things the more you talk to them and you start hearing things that you're not so used to. And then all of a sudden you can find yourself doing something completely different or trying out new things, like we just said. I think that's awesome that I was able to figure that out and
Hmm.
learn that not all information can come from things like books or something like that. It also can come from people.
Yeah, that's a powerful thing to learn, right? Is like that you open up your mindset and your perspectives and do exactly what you've been describing, right? You talked about noticing more and kind of picking up and learning things from other people, the freedom that gives you, and the things that can do to expand your world. And I just had to acknowledge, this is me being a little selfish, but like I love how you said like, oh, maybe that just came with maturity and with age. And it's like, well, yeah, but it's also like, when people say that just comes with age or comes with maturity, it's because you're literally living life every day, making choices, performing actions, living your life. That's what maturity and coming of age or getting older is, right? So in a way, like, those things don't just happen magically in a vacuum. They are the output or the outcome of everything you do every single day, right? So
Yeah, well, of course, yeah, we live every day, see new things and stuff like that. But there's also, I mean, there's a lens and different things. I mean, I'm kind of going back to this one of these classes I used to take, and it's called theory of knowledge. There's like perspective. There's different kinds of like frameworks and how to talk about things. Um, yeah, but there's a lens in how you see those things every day,
mm,
and I think that's what kind of changed between me and other people, because the lens that I was using compared to other people is starting to shift a little bit differently. I can't give you a specific in how, or I realize it just doesn't it. I don't want to like name examples, or it definitely is different than how it used to be. And I think from talking to people, your lens kind of widens too,
mm.
because you're learning new things. And when that lens widens, then that's just being more knowledgeable. And then always having more knowledge is better than having less, at least from what I've learned. So
Mm.
in most cases, but
It seems like it's a cycle that feeds itself, right? Like, you have a lens that you look through, but then you can do what you said, which is I can be an observer, and then I can be aware of my lens. I can switch the lens. The more I
mm,
look through the lens, the more I learn. The wider the lens, subsequently, the more I learn, and then the
yeah,
wider the lens.
for sure.
Yeah, like I appreciate you saying, it's like, "Oh, I don't really have a specific example right now." And surely you could if we had, time for you to look, but does it really matter? Like, the point is, you're saying it's like, it's really about that lens, is what I'm hearing you say.
Now that we're saying it like that, I feel like if I can't describe a way, then sometimes then I don't even think I know what I'm talking about. But um, I don't know. It's just it's interesting. Again, like with the maturity thing, it feels like it kind of just comes naturally. I feel like with everyone it does, but for some reason I feel it differently. I don't want to say I'm like different from everyone and like completely unique. And I mean, there's an argument for it and so, but
Hmm.
it's just there's so much that like different people learn each day, and I guess that's what makes me feel more unique than usually what I'm used to hearing.
Well, let me offer this, and then you respond to this. There are a lot of people who mature and get older and never change. There are a lot of people who mature and get older and don't really learn new things. And that, I'm not making that a bad thing or making those bad people. But what I'm saying is, what's different between you maturing and getting older and someone who does the same thing but doesn't do the same thing, if you take my meaning.
Well, I still think people change. I mean, I think people change constantly. I think I think
Okay.
um I don't think there's a couple things that like maybe there's like root like ideals or a bit or like things people go by that doesn't really change. I mean stuff like culture, where you come from. I mean, if you were born in, I don't know, if you were born in California, that doesn't change. You were born in California. Um, but I guess what makes me different, that's a good question. Um, it's always so difficult to answer these questions.
Well, but actually, if this helps, I think you already told us that. Like, I was kind of defending you in a way, or attempting to defend you in a way. I think you've already told us that is that, it is the looking at yourself, being the observer, being open to learning new things and so forth. Like, I think what I was trying to say is, it sounds like those are the things that really have helped you to grow and mature. And as your world continued to grow and expand, that some people don't do those things, or maybe they don't do those things in the same way. So I think just the telling of your story in general shows us how you have made choices to kind of take charge of the direction that your life goes.
For sure. I mean, I definitely would say that taking charge is definitely something that's like it's extraordinary compared to most people, but
Mm.
I just feel as a person and from my perspective, it feels like what I've gone through just feels a little bit different than what I feel that most other people have gone through, and that comes from listening as well. But I think that's also not a bad thing, because then I'm learning about all these other people and what they've gone through as well. So seeing that, it's awesome. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Probably more than talking, honestly.
So much power in listening, right? I mean, so much power. I feel like, we are getting into a phase and a stage in our world where now people are starting to see the value of listening. Like, we've gone through our expert phase, and it's all about talking and what you know and what you have to share and all that sort of thing. And I feel like now, because of this is me pontificating, telling my opinions, but like, now that it's all out there and everybody has, many people have equal access to it. Now it's coming back to, okay, now let's listen about people's unique experiences. Let's hear what people have to say. So it was just kind of an observation, my opinion.
Sure. Well, I mean, again, you have a podcast for just listen, mainly listening. I think I don't want to bash on people, but I do think more people are focusing on talking about themselves and stuff. There's definitely like a lot of people out there
Oh,
just constantly talking about themselves. I'm like, okay, all right. I'm just like listening to it.
yeah. Oh, I'm not saying we're there yet. I'm just saying I think the tides are changing, or the focus
Maybe.
is shifting. But let me ask you the fifth question, as short or as long as you like. Xavier, what does getting off the comma look like for you?
It's getting off the comma look like for me. Well, like I said earlier, just kind of like what I've learned. It's almost, well, going off the comment, like I said much earlier, was then you're springing forth into something new to your
Mm,
eventual period, right? So I think where it comes from, where it comes off of, is just now, the present and the upcoming future. And it's just, okay, now that I know what I've done and what I've accomplished since then, how can I do this? How can I use this as a way to spring me forward from, I guess, in this scenario, the comma, but I think that's something that's really the next steps. And that's just for me to use, my decision making, everything that I said that I wanted to be like disciplined, open minded, stuff like that. It's springing off of there, but just using it as a foundation.
yeah. Cool. Well, and it just reinforces what you've shared with us, right? I love that phrase, bringing forth into something new on the way to your actual period. And then you said, now that I know, how can I use this? I mean, again, back to what you've been talking to us about, the lens and what you learn, and finding opportunities in all things that happen to and for and with you, right? So
Sure.
very cool.
Sure, for sure.
Nice. So, as we wrap things up here, Xavier, so if folks want to learn a little bit more about you, hear more about your story, obviously we have a limited amount of time to actually, give your story justice. We could certainly talk about a lot more, but if folks wanted to learn more or maybe connect with you or just see what you're up to, where can they find you? And I'll be sure to put the links in the show notes so folks can just click on them.
Well, I think the most accurate is probably just my Instagram, the one I'm on the most. I was just the ats Xavier D Meza. It's XAVIERD MEZA. From there, you could find my link tree. I'm sure the link tree will probably be in the bio somewhere. So
Mhm.
just find me from there.
Nice. And then the last thing we do before we wrap is a section I call acknowledgments. And because obviously this podcast is all about sharing people's stories and giving people a voice and letting people be heard. And it seems like your story wouldn't be complete if we didn't give you the opportunity to give others in your world a voice. And so what folks will do here is somebody you might want to boost or lift up or give a voice to. And that can be causes that matter to you, organizations, or other creators, or even just people in your world that matter to you. So who would you like to acknowledge today?
Sure. I definitely don't want to name anyone specific, but I would just say the friends and even the coworkers I've had, just every single person that's been in my life has contributed to the kind of person I am, for sure. And I think that's also important just for other people to know, like, the people in your life do matter more than you think. And that's something that, acknowledging that is good enough to understand, like, where you are and where you are as a person with the people around you. So just, everyone that's been in my life, I don't want to name anyone specific, but they've all put me in the situation where I could talk to a story like this that I have today. So I think
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I
sure,
love that. The
sure.
people in your life do matter. Such truth. Such truth. Xavier, thank you for taking time out of your day to come and share your story with us. I know there will be folks out there who will be able to connect with this, and you've given folks a lot of things to think about and kind of reflect on their own lives. I will certainly look forward to following your story and seeing where it goes. Because like you said, commas are followed by periods, which are followed by new sentences, new commas and new periods. So thank you again. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
What an honor it is for me to witness these powerful stories. I hope you feel the same way too. Think about what you learned from this conversation. What stood out for you? What challenged you? What inspired you? And I encourage you to write it down in some form of journaling and reflection. Surprises can reveal themselves to you when you do this. And if you were moved by today's conversation, pass it along to someone you care about. Let's spread the word. Let's continue to build connection. And if you do discover something you'd like to unpack further, book a call with me and let's talk about it. My links are in the show notes. Be sure to like this episode, follow the podcast here on this platform and social media at Off the Comma. And feel free to comment and interact with these posts and episodes. Check out my website for workshops, events, and my sponsor community. I'm covering the costs of production by curating my own sponsors who align with our vision. Be sure to check them out. They're all powerful people and businesses. Thank you for listening to this episode of Off the Comma. As always, keep noticing and keep listening.